Chapter 6. The body was hidden in the tall grass across from the local high school campus. A giant pair of boulders sat in the very same field, gray and rough like elephant carcasses. The dead girl lay between them, less than 2 feet from the curb of the winding carpool lane. It took a day for anyone to find her, a full day of rotting in the heat of the sun. The school janitor, an old man from El Salvador, noticed the black vultures perched on the rocks, taking turns gliding into the long green blades. He took out one of the extension pruners and wielded it like a scythe, shooing away the vultures. He parted the grass and recognized from experience the smell of death. When he saw the young girl, he plunged the serrated pruning blade into the ground to mark the spot and solemnly walked back to the school. Over the next few hours, the janitor stood with the principal and 5 police officers, extracted the body, handling the scene more like garbage men than detectives. The principal asked the sheriff if they could keep the name of the school and location out of the news. The sheriff shrugged and said, "It'll come out one way or the other. Kids talk." A deputy asked the principal if he thought it was a student. Everyone in this town between 14 and 19 is a student here, not a doubt in my mind. The sheriff had no choice but to store the body in a mild room in the back of the small police station and wait for a representative of the elected coroner, a wrecker with a high school education, to transfer the girl to a pathologist 47 miles north, where an ad hoc post-mortem was completed. The biological sex of the victim was determined to be male. The cause of death was inconclusive. The specific age of the victim could not be determined. A white male in a dress between the ages of 12 and 25. The pathologist included a partial fingerprint and a radiograph of the teeth with a report. The local news ran a story and the school became infamous, even though no student had gone unaccounted for since the discovery of the body. The police did not look in earnest for any missing prostitutes. The screaming from the street amounted only to whispers as polite Christian society, or what was left of it, moved on without skipping a beat, while the patrons of the town's gay bar and Ronaldo's understood the potential significance of the girl's body. A lot of girls who came up from Georgia or down from Myrtle Beach, or even as far as North Carolina, often found themselves walking back to Ronaldo's with split lips and black eyes. This girl was dead, and whoever dumped her didn't even care that the building was overshadowing the field of a public school. Carlo racked his brain to try to remember who the girl could have been. She could have been anyone he had met in passing by the shop, any girl he'd bought a soda for or traded makeup tips, anyone who might offer him that extra amount of attentive honesty that he craved so that he might hope it would lead to friendship, but it never did. Ronaldo's was a rough scene. His loneliness only persisted. Maybe that's why he didn't flinch when the tall, sad German gave him a ride and a cup of coffee. And then it occurred to him one afternoon as he cleared away the caked makeup debris off the sample case at work that his strange encounter with Sten may have been a false run. What if he meant to kill him? No, he thought. There were worse men who frequented Ronaldo's already. Sten hadn't touched them. He could have taken Carlo when he was inside his truck. Why drive him to Ronaldo's for coffee? He had been good to go, half asleep and ready to die. No, Sten was a good guy. He laughed. One dead body, albeit a trans person's body, and even that fact was hazy, and the whole town was shattered. This would have been a Tuesday in Texas, perhaps maybe Brownsville, but certainly not El Paso. Maybe anywhere else in Texas, he thought. His thoughts raced. They'd been racing more than normal lately. He'd help close up the makeup store at night, and still weary from the long day on his feet, still thinking of makeup remover, he'd driven back to the house where he'd climbed through a kitchen window in relative silence to make a sandwich while Tillandsia was seeing a client. He sat alone in the front seat of the Honda and ate the sandwich and drank something and then smoked a cigarette out the window as if he were a detective on a midnight stakeout. He had done this routine so many times that his work nights had fused into a single memory, one long night where shadows moved through him. He remembered who the rough guys were, the ones who drank at Ollie's instead of the Hideaway, the local gay bar. He went through the catalog of dark, unhappy faces in his mind and imagined them dumping the girl's body at the high school. Carlo knew the people down at Ronaldo's, but they only knew of him through Tillandsia. He didn't understand how that was possible because he had never seen Tillandsia go anywhere. She was agoraphobic. He couldn't tell whether she had once been a steady member of the scene who had since reached an only spoken of mythical status, or if she had always been there as an absent phantom. Even though he was present, he kept her relevant within the group. They still referred to him as Tillandsia's roommate. Ronaldo usually asked Carlo how she was doing. Carlo assumed she was a client, but he never saw the New Orleans transplant come by the house. The season changed. It was another ugly summer. The local fixation on the murder waned after a few liquor store holdups and a Walmart parking lot shooting. Then a second body turned up. This time, Carlo stopped hanging out at Ronaldo's after dark. The second girl's body wasn't even hidden. She lay strewn across the gravel hill at the corner of Whitmore and Osceola, in front of the computer repair shop and its squat, red stucco shack. It looked like someone had thrown the dead body from a moving vehicle. A crudely whittled bamboo knife jutted out of her back, an improvised weapon or possibly a torture device. It looked like the straw of some gaudy tiki beverage, stuck next to the shoulder blade. The sheriff's department streamlined the post-mortem. Whoever had killed her had done a pitiful job. The medical examiner determined that she hadn't died until after she was thrown from the car. Despite the evidence of strangulation, it was blood loss from her crotch area. The victim, who again presented as female, was biologically male. Her penis and testicles had been cut off. The pinched and folded skin at the edge of the wound suggested shears of some kind were used instead of a single blade. The computer repair shop was well known among drug dealers in the area. It was the only place to buy prepaid burner phones and smartphone capabilities. They also sold kits for serious gamers to build liquid coolant systems. The shop was owned by an old widow, the heiress to a long-gone used car lot fortune, but it was her son who ran the shop. His name was Marvin. He was 36 years old. The locals described him as ornery. He never wore shoes. As a result, the bottoms of his feet were blackened, like that of a 19th century pauper's. It had gotten to the point where no store or restaurant would permit him inside, but he still accompanied his elderly mother on her errands, standing outside waiting for her by the automatic doors of the grocery stores and pharmacies she frequented, mumbling to himself. He wore t-shirts with computer logos, video game trademarks, and Japanese cartoon characters. He didn't look people in the eyes when they spoke to him, but that didn't matter because people rarely spoke to him outside of the computer store. He would repair the computers on the floor of the shop, hunched over the intricate parts of his tools, while the customers had to tiptoe around his spread. He drank cans of warm Mountain Dew all day long and would become agitated if customers wore a pungent cologne. Marvin discovered the girl's body in the morning. The back of the store had a warped boardwalk that connected the back entrance to his mother's house. He used to play there as a child, back when the computer shop was one of his father's several auto parts stores. He walked the wooden planks every morning, the calloused soles of his feet brushing against the splinters. He went inside and turned the lights on and looked out at the gravel hill. The body lay in the shade of an oak tree. He walked outside with a can of Mountain Dew in his hand and prodded at her warm skull with his big toe. The police were incredulous and initially wanted to pin the killing on him. They did what they could to get him alone in an interrogation room, but his mother had enlisted the help of her late husband's maverick lawyer, a flashy, good old boy with a silver tongue. The sheriff abandoned any bad faith suspicion of Marvin. He kept his name out of the press briefings, but as soon as the news hit, rednecks and teenagers alike went out to graffiti the front of the computer shop. Someone tossed a cinder block through the window. Marvin became even more of a recluse and stopped opening the shop except for a few mornings a week. He still wandered the boardwalk between his mother's house and the back door. Passers-by on the sidewalk off Osceola saw him pacing, mumbling to himself.